Welcome back. The economic freedom fighters say religion must not be used to promote ethnic cleansing. EFF leader Julius Malema raised this during a debate it brought before the National Assembly today. The party is calling for the closure of the Israeli embassy in South Africa and the suspension of all diplomatic ties with Israel. The ANC says the UN Security Council has proved incapable of stopping the carnage and protecting civilians against the Israeli military onslaught. Professor and director of the Centre for Social Change at the University of Johannesburg, Patrick Bond, now joins us in studio for more on this conversation. Professor, thank you so much for joining us here on SABC News.
Oh, thanks for having me, Bali. Good to be with you.
Great. Let's start off here. I mean, we saw what took place today in Parliament and calls from the EFF calling for diplomatic ties to be cut with Israel. Let's start off there. What is your reaction to the latest when it comes to the Israel and Hamas war?
Well, I think personally this is late, but very welcome that the party, the ANC, that had resisted making that move, especially if you recall 2014, another Israeli attack on Gaza led Jacob Zuma to contemplate whether to throw out the ambassador. And the pressure on him from inside the party to do so was counteracted by really heavy pressure from donors, from establishment businesses, and Barack Obama, whom he was visiting that very week in, it would have been August 2014. So at that point he said, no, we're not going to throw out the ambassador. And the Zionist community was very delighted. So the power relations have changed. And of course, we're looking at a genocide now. It's so much worse. And so it's quite logical that this, I think, overdue, I mean, plenty of Latin American countries have just been tossing out their Israeli ambassador, really sending the signal that this attack on a whole people is not going to be accepted.
And of course, we know that this vote will only be taking place next week in Parliament. But at the same time, the ANC is saying that it is willing to support that motion which was brought in by the EFF in Parliament today. And they basically need a 2/3 majority. So what's the likelihood of this motion actually succeeding in Parliament?
Well, you know, I don't expect any ANC members to break from this position. I think that's good. And it does show the merits of having a sort of left opposition within Parliament that kind of pulls the ANC to a logical position. We have a very strong foreign minister who seems quite willing to take this step with this encouragement. But you know, it also then says, once a symbolic statement, getting rid of an ambassador, obviously an embassy can be downgraded, but still perform certain functions for those that need to go back and forth. There are a lot of dual citizens, family members and things. But I think the real question is what will happen economically, because there is about close to 4.8 billion rand a year in imports, about the same in exports, at least 2021 figures. And there we've got some major dilemmas ahead, which would be, should coal be exported? $100 million, about 1.85 billion rand a year. Diamonds, number two. So those are two big exports that then the ANC will be, you know, compelled to ask, should we be trading with Israel?
And exactly, and I wanted to come there. What is the overall implications for South Africa to cut diplomatic ties? I know that you're touching slightly on the economy and as well as diamonds and coal, but on a larger scale, what does this mean for South Africans?
Well, it would be part of a move that people are confused by. I mean, Russia invaded Ukraine, and the ANC has tacit support for that, although it's hotly contested. And Israel invaded Gaza, and indeed you could say it's a settler colonial society that has invaded a large chunk of the West Bank and traditional Palestine. And on this side, the ANC is with the victims, and so that's refreshing. I mean, it means you can have a nuanced debate about, well, what should a foreign policy position be, and then it means economically what's at stake and who wins and loses. So big coal companies that benefit from these exports, I think we're in a situation in Bali where they're going to be asked not to export coal in general. Our coal mines should be shut down. And the obvious reason is climate catastrophe, as well as local pollution. And then the next question, well, there are communities and jobs. So what do we do for a just transition? Luckily, that debate is getting underway because of the climate imperative of stopping coal. Diamonds are a bit trickier. I mean, it's weird. We export $100 million but we import $22 million. So there's a processing going on in Israel that we really should be doing here. We should be doing beneficiation, we should be doing polishing and cutting in a way that currently Israel, but also Dubai and Mumbai and Antwerp, Belgium, plenty of places that could do that. So I think those two big ones. So the third biggest is grapes, and of course that's a sensitive market, but it's only 10% of the trade, and I'm sure there are plenty of other markets to replace those with.
And what do you make when it comes to the calls by the president saying that Israel needs to be charged by the International Criminal Court? And of course they are saying, basically the president is saying that this is a genocide being committed by the Israeli government. There are some even saying that, it seems as if South Africa might be finding themselves in a very conflicted position, because here they are, they are clearly showing their support for the Palestinian people, but at the same time you have the international relations minister saying, they are saying that they are siding with the victims. Well,
they are siding, and I think this is a good move, and it's again that schizophrenia, isn't it, about whether South Africa condemns the ICC for its traditions of pro-Western bias, and that would obviously include the huge furor over whether Vladimir Putin dared to come to Sandton for the BRICS meeting in August and face arrest and face a constitutional crisis. And since that was resolved by President Ramaphosa apparently asking him, just don't come, you can zoom in. Now the question is, do you want to re-legitimize the ICC having done it? And I think it's probably a good thing. And the ICC I don't expect to rise to the occasion. There'll be a lot of pressure. Even Emmanuel Macron, who had banned solidarity protests with Palestinians, now is beginning to say, no, you need a ceasefire. Maybe there is a break. Maybe the West can be, split up a little bit. But the real question is, what will our society do? Because this is great leadership. ICC throughout the ambassador, these are what people have demanded. But it's really where our daily activities, where we, say, consume from the Cape Union Mart. That's one big target of this BDS movement. And they're picketing, Rosebank here in Johannesburg on Sunday and many other places. And because the owner of that, Philip Kravitz, is a very strong Zionist. And those kind of connections that have always made Israel and South Africa very, let's say, crucial in the whole international community, also extend to arms, and where there's a man, Ivor Ichikowitz, whose Paramount Group has been doing deals with Elbit. Now, they're not, we don't know of any connections into Israel, but they're certainly doing deals in Ecuador to beef up the Bombay, the big military transport vehicle, with Israeli technology. Those sorts of things obviously should be banned. And indeed, Ichikowicz's Paramount Group was the subject last Friday of a protest by the sort of BDS community. I think those are, the sort of healthy things that remind us of our past, where sanctions helped to bring down the apartheid regime, especially in 1985 here in Johannesburg. Peaceful but hard-hitting, and taking, in a sense, the elites and dividing them by making it more expensive to do business with a rogue regime.
South Africans are also asking, and many across the world actually, when it comes to the calls by President Cyril Ramaphosa, to charge the Israeli government, and this is putting basically squarely on the International Criminal Court. Should they not heed this call? What will this say about the International Criminal Court?
Well, and the ICC really lost credibility by not, for example, going after Tony Blair, because Britain was a member, is a member. The US has not been a member, but they have plenty of war criminals, George W. Bush and plenty more. And Israel's not a member. So it may not mean anything except that Netanyahu wouldn't be able to travel without the fear that he would be subject again to the sort of controversy we saw with Putin coming to Sandton.
All right then, Mr. Bond, thank you so much for your time and for that insight.
Thanks, Mbali.
All right, that is Patrick Bond, Professor and Director of the Centre for Social Change at the University of Johannesburg.